Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen. I'm glad everybody could be with us today. Hope everybody's having a healthy week for their families, everybody in Louisiana, all over the United States. We've got a great show today. Segment one, we're going to talk about graduate transfers, and LSU just picked up another graduate transfer from Harvard. We're going to talk about wide receiver U. That's right, wide receiver U for Louisiana. Who is wide receiver U? It's something to think about, right? You know, I'll show out my favorite players over the years from LSU and the other state colleges over the last 35 years. We're going to talk about also our spotlight of the week, Amite High School. Amite High School, what a great program. Segment 4, we're going to have to talk about the NFL draft. And segment 5, we're going to talk about the NFL notes. Segment 6, the Saints. And segment 7, we've got our mailbag. I want to go ahead and go into our segment 1, which is, LSU picked up another graduate transfer. They have one scholarship left. You can only sign 25 players in a class. That's the NCAA rule. LSU had 3 scholarships they did not use during recruiting. They have added 2 phenomenal players, in my opinion. Gabriel Cox from North Dakota State, a linebacker. Probably could have been a second-round draft pick if he would have just put his name in the NFL draft, this past draft. Was going to go to LSU, be a linebacker. Probably starter day one. Guy runs a 4.5 40 at 6'3", about 235, and has a chance, again, to be very, very good. At a time, LSU needs a linebacker because they lost Patrick Queen, Jacob Phillips, Chasson coming off the edge. So, it's big-time pickup. Then they just picked up this week a big-time lineman from Harvard, Liam Shanahan. I like this kid a lot. I actually watched his film when I heard he was coming to LSU and went on and watched a bunch of film on him, about 10 minutes worth. I love how this kid is very, very tough. He's mean. And you could tell that when Orgeron watched the film and they had, the offensive line coach, Craig, when he watched the film, you could tell that when this kid, he even pulls a lot for them because he played a lot of guard. Played a lot of right guard. Played some tackle early in his career at Harvard. Look, people, I want to tell you this. Harvard's got 7 offensive linemen / tight ends in the NFL right now. I mean, this is a program known for producing offensive linemen, developing really good, big, tall. They get them at 6'5", 6'4", and about 240. 250, and then they come out of there, they weigh in 310, running 5 flat 40s. And Liam is one of those guys. He's an NFL prospect. And for LSU, I mean, he could be a tackle or he could be a guard because he pulls, and he's quick, and he's tough, and he's super strong. And he had about 30 takedowns in the highlights. It's hard. Look, you can make a highlight tape, and I know you can show just all the good stuff, but very few linemen have 30 knockouts, pulling, more or less in 4 years, and most of that tape was from 2 years from him. But Liam, I think, is going to fit in well with LSU. He's 6'5". Early reports he was 270. He's really 310. And I'd be curious to know what his bench press is because if you watch his film, he looks like a guy that's benching over 4 1/4 easily. And I'm sure when he gets to LSU with Tommy Moffitt, this kid probably would be benching 500 pounds. School is like number 1 in Ivy League. Academics is first, right? Athletics is second. So he will have time to work on his football craft. And, again, this kid's going to have a chance to be the missing piece to the offensive line because they lost 4 starters. And they basically have their swing guy back who would have started at Ingram, will start this year, and then Austin Dackless will be a tackle. So basically technically LSU returns 2 starters. Liam, I would take it to be a 3rd starter. Cordell Thomas will probably be a guard for LSU and start. I look for good things out of Anthony Bradford, Chasen Hines. The Evans kid from Haynesville is going to be a good center at some point. So, I mean, I like the way the O-line is shaping up. And so I want to throw this out to everybody that's listening. This is about Harvard. What do you think the average apartment size is in Cambridge, Massachusetts? Now, Cambridge is Harvard. That's the campus. The average apartment size to live on campus at Harvard is 845 square feet. What do you think the average rent price is to live in Cambridge? Now, this is a student or I guess a teacher to live on campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts to go to Harvard. The average rent price is $3,179 per month. $3,179 per month. Not cheap. Famous alumni. My favorite player to ever go to Harvard was Ryan Fitzpatrick, the quarterback, who's currently with the Miami Dolphins and spent a long time with Tampa Bay. And even though the Saints beat him a lot, he gave the Saints all they could handle. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick seems like he's been in the league 30 years. But Ryan's a heck of a quarterback, and he went to Harvard. Great player. And like I said, they have 7 linemen / tight ends in the NFL right now. Currently, Harvard does. But watching film on this kid, I mean, we can read about it. All of us can read about it on the internet or in the paper, but watch his film. And, you know, it speaks for itself. I could see why Ed Orgeron and Coach Craig really wanted him bad, because this guy can really, I mean, at the snap of the ball, he's quick, he's low, he's strong, and he's mean. He likes to finish. You know, a lot of O-linemen, they get on their D-line and they don't finish guys. You know, they don't put them in the ground. But Liam, he finishes. And super strong, great hands, what you want in an O-lineman, great feet, aggressive, quick. I think he checks all the boxes. And if he can have a great year at LSU, he's a high draft pick. Another home run for LSU. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to go to segment 2. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back, everybody. I want to mention on the show, please be sure to download one of our podcasts. It helps us with our stats and helps us grow with businesses. So please, like it and download. You can download. It's free. You can download any show, and then you're able to get, future shows from us, and we don't have to email you the show in the future. But our segment 2, we're going to talk about who is wide receiver U in Louisiana. And I did my research, put a lot of time into this, and I thought the listening audience would love this. Who has produced the top receivers in the state of Louisiana? This is just Louisiana. What colleges? And I'm going to talk about some of the different guys. Now, I can't talk about it for 3 hours. We won't mention everybody, so I'm sure somebody will be left out, and you can email me. But we're going to try and cover this more than the normal person. So who is wide receiver U? And after doing research and watching football the last 35, 36 years. Basically, there's two programs who would be, I would say, NFLU for Louisiana. One is Grambling, and the other is LSU. Grambling has produced more NFL receivers than any college in Louisiana, and more what I would call all-pro receivers than any school in Louisiana. Sammy White was a Grambling letterman. He played for the Minnesota Vikings in 4 Super Bowls with Fran Tarkenton. That's right, he went to Grambling. Scotty Anderson from Jonesboro Hodge was a high draft pick out of Grambling in 2001. Stevie Anderson, also from Jonesboro Hodge, was a draft pick. Nate Singleton played for the San Francisco 49ers, was a starter, was a great player in the NFL from Grambling. Jake Reed was a long-time receiver, was drafted in 92, was one of the better receivers in the league at that time. And one of my favorites of all time, Charlie Joyner. Charlie Joyner played with Dan Fouts with the San Diego Chargers. Most people just remember Kellen Winslow and Dan Fouts. But Charlie Joyner and a receiver by the name of Jefferson out of Arizona State, those guys were phenomenal. That's one of the best offenses I've ever seen in the NFL to this day was San Diego Chargers, Air Coryell. But Charlie Joyner played a long time in the NFL. Hall of Famer. There was also Carlos Pennywell from the Shreveport area, was a third-round pick in 1978. Dwight Scales was a Pittsburgh Steeler, played with Terry Bradshaw. Robert Woods was drafted in 78. 2 of them in 78 from Grambling. Frank Lewis was a long-time receiver in the NFL, went to Grambling. Played with the Pittsburgh Steelers at some point, also during his career, Buffalo Bills. Chad Williams was a third-round pick, Grambling. And then you got LSU. And LSU had a ton of players go to the NFL over the years. Eric Martin, who was out of Van Vliet, Texas, converted running back to receiver at LSU, played a long time with the Saints. Eddie Kennison, one of my favorite players, he just got hired by LSU in player personnel, was out of Washington Marion High School. To me, one of the smoothest, fastest receivers ever to come out of Louisiana. Had a long career and finished with the Kansas City Chiefs. Wendell Davis was a phenomenal receiver. Played at LSU with Tommy Hodson, Tony Moss. Some of the best hands I've ever seen at LSU was Wendell Davis. Brandon LaFell, who was out of Houston, Texas, was a high draft pick, free agent right now. Josh Reed, Rain High School, was a converted running back, played a long time in the NFL, Buffalo Bills. Devery Henderson, one of my all-time favorites, watched him play running back at Opelousas High, was a great college skill player at LSU and became a receiver, I thought, in the NFL. Was still raw in college, but had some great years with the Saints. Early Doucette was a converted quarterback that played at St. Martinville, played receiver at LSU, was a great receiver, had a short career, but had some good years with the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously Odell Beckham, currently, Jarvis Landry, DJ Chark, all 3 currently in the NFL right now. Justin Jefferson, just drafted out of Destrehan. Trendon Holiday, we can put him as a slot receiver. And one of my favorites from way back from LSU was Carlos Carson, who's a Florida native, played a long time, still holds a lot of records for what he did in yards and catches against Rice University in the 70s. And I like Tracy Porter, that was from Southern Lab, was a great receiver from Southern Lab. One of the first great players to come out of Southern Lab High School in Baton Rouge. Sammy Martin, I thought, was a great receiver. Became a receiver in the pros, played a lot of running back at LSU, and will always be known for that long run against Texas A&M in Tiger Stadium. And one of my other favorites from LSU was Todd Kinchin. Todd played at Trafton, which is now called Dunham. Trafton High School, one of the great players to ever come out of Baton Rouge. Still thought he caught the pass against Vanderbilt with no seconds remaining in Nashville, and they said he was out of bounds. Dwayne Bowe was a great receiver, Miami native, had a long career, Kansas City Chiefs. And, there were some earlier players that did good. Tommy Morrell from LSU, Ben Jones, Larry Shipp, Willie Turner. Russell Gage is currently in the NFL. Demetrius Byrd got hurt and never was able to play in the NFL. Skylar Green was pretty good. And one of my favorites, another favorite, was Raji McGee from Bogalusa. Raji had a lot of talent. And Reuben Randall from Bastrop, Louisiana. I just throwing it out because, we're all wanting to listen to something that means something, right? And I think throwing out all these old names. And then obviously Michael Clayton, who had a long career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Craig Davis went in the first round from LSU from O.P. Walker, which is now Landry Walker High School in Algiers. And James Wright, that's right, from Bell Chase, was a pretty good receiver, recently retired in the last 2 years. And Andy Hamilton, one of the favorite targets to Burt Jones at LSU back in the 70s. Other schools that have produced great receivers in Louisiana. Louisiana Tech had Roger Carr that played for the Colts and Burt Jones. Billy Rickman played a long time. In 1977 was a 10th round pick. Pat Tilley was a great receiver with the St. Louis Cardinals. Had a long career. Was one of the top receivers in the league. Bobby Slaughter. Troy Edwards out of Huntington High School. Played at Tech with Tim Rattay. Jonathan Holland, Carlos Henderson, Trent Taylor, who's currently in the NFL, played at Evangel Christian, Tom Spinks, and Ken Liberto. Those are some great ones that came out of Tech. ULL had Lynn Kleinpeter. He was the first receiver taken in the 13th round in 1967. Harold Porter from ULL. Brandon Stokely from ULL wasn't drafted. And they never had a first-round pick receiver, ULL. Had some great receivers over the years. Tulane had Steve Berrios in 1972. Alton Alexis was a good player. Mark Zeno from Lutcher. Jawan Dawson, the late Jawan Dawson from H.L. Bourgeois, had a great career at Tulane and in the NFL. Roy Dale Williams from East St. John had a good career. Great player in college. And Ryan Grant had a great career in the NFL from Texas, from Tulane. In Northwestern State, you had Corin Arledge. You had Dick Redding, Mike Allman, Mark Duper with the Dolphins. James Bennett, Victor Otis. Odessa Turner was a great player in the NFL. Al Edwards, Floyd Turner, Pat Palmer. Look at all the receivers that have come out of this state. Southern had Harold Carmichael, the tallest receiver ever at 6'8", NFL Hall of Famer with the Philadelphia Eagles. Also coming out of Southern, you had Rod Milburn in 1974, was a great player. Ken Ellis, 1970. Willie Davenport in 1969. Elmore, Maple in 1969. Southern had a lot of good receivers, too, go in the NFL and play a long time. And Frank Pitts. Frank Pitts was a very good player in the NFL. He was drafted in 1965. But, email us. I know we didn't mention everybody, and we didn't get every school, but we can't do it for 2 hours. But, write in and give us some of your other receivers that you liked over the years. My favorite receiver of everybody I've mentioned was Michael Clayton and Wendell Davis, and I would have to say now Jamar Chase. And it's amazing. I think Jamar Chase is the best receiver to ever play at LSU, and I mentioned seemed like 100 players. And I was a big fan of Sammy White growing up, Charlie Joyner, Harold Carmichael, and Brandon Stokely. So that would be my probably all Louisiana receiver team. But I thought Wendell Davis had the best hands ever. Michael Clayton was probably the most gifted big receiver I've ever seen. And Jamar Chase, he's got the DNA for the whole package of all boxes. I saw it at Rummel, man. I had him on my TV show when he was a junior. And I asked him and his dad when he came on the show, I said, man, why are you so good at catching the ball? Why are you so good playing this game at Rummel? And he just said, hard work. Hard work. Work at it. And you can tell Jamar works at it. Incredible. I mean, if he was eligible this year in the 220 draft, which he wasn't, he would be a first-round pick and in the first receiver taken over all of these guys. All of them. And then Justin Jefferson's another new favorite of mine. I remember watching Justin at Destrehan High School. And I know everybody's read about how he wasn't ranked and this and that, but if you read our magazine, I had him ranked high. I mean, I don't rank, like 1 to 5. I just said he was a big-time D1 player that hasn't filled out. And the only reason that LSU signed him is because he wasn't qualified. They didn't offer him, but no one did, because he wasn't qualified till after signing day. But he was a phenomenal player at Destrehan. Don't miss. If anybody says he wasn't any good in high school, those Destrehan coaches will argue with you. Trust me. I remember Coach Robichaux talking to Coach before the game, Justin's junior year. I said, Coach, what about this guy returning punts? Justin Jefferson. He said, this guy's going to be phenomenally. He just got to get his grades in order. He's going to be phenomenal. And he did. He did, and he's going to be with the Vikings and one of their top players, and he's got a chance to have a great year for Minnesota. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to have our high school spotlight of the week. Amite High School. We'll be right back.
Like what you hear? Well, make sure to check out our website, lafootballmagazine.com, for all of the latest recruiting information statewide. This week, we catch up with Tiger linebacker Jacoby Brock, Zachary wide receiver Chris Hilton, and we also will provide NFL draft coverage on all the Louisiana natives and college football players selected. So if you want to get your recruiting fix, go to lafootballmagazine.com today.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen. Make sure to download our shows. If you're a fan of the show and you love the show, please download the show. It helps us grow, and we want to grow this thing into something special. And during the coronavirus, I hope, again, everybody's healthy. A shout out to all medical professionals. Thank you for the job you're doing, trying to save lives, and pray for all the families in the United States, all over the world. And like everybody else, hoping that we can get back to 100% soon. Our high school spotlight of the week is Amite High School. And Amite's one of the hottest programs in the United States, not just Louisiana. From a recruiting standpoint, over the last 6 years, from a high school football standpoint, the last 35 years. Amite's always had good players. They've always had good teams. They won the state championship in 2018. Their head football coach, Coach Powell, has done a phenomenal job. Watching Coach Powell go into year 6 as the head coach. He's one of the best young coaches at developing players that I've seen in the state. If you just look at what he's done, he takes kids, he puts them in the best position to succeed, not only for the team, but for their future college ability. He has an eye for where to play players, what positions, and where do they naturally fit. And when you play Amite, they've always had talent, they've always had speed. Now they have linemen, and now they have the winning tradition's back with Coach Powell. The perception is back, and kids want to go to Amite. And so it's a program that doesn't rebuild, they reload, and they reload either with a young team or an older team. And so the 220 team is going to be an older team that has a chance to be like 2018 to win a state championship. Now think about this, listeners. I grew up following Amite High School as a teenager when I was playing football. I just followed all the programs that put out the best players. And they had a quarterback by the name of Michael Carr back in the early 90s. He was the Michael Vick before Michael Vick. Signed with Clemson. It didn't work out for whatever reason. Never played it down there. But Michael Carr was the Michael Vick before Michael Vick. And they had player after player after player that came out of that program back in the 90s and 80s. You also had Lester Ricard that signed as a quarterback to LSU, finished at Tulane. You had Al Head, who was a phenomenal athlete and track guy that went to LSU, didn't play, didn't stay in school for whatever reason, but was a phenomenal player. You had Rodney Boykins, a quarterback that was phenomenal, went to Virginia. Many players. And currently, get this, currently in college football right now, they have 7 or 8 players playing college football that are NFL prospects. Devontae Lee, LSU linebacker. Ismail Sopsher, who redshirted at Alabama, will be, when they get his body changed back to his sophomore year, will be a pro prospect. Devontae Smith, receiver, Alabama, All-American, went to Amite. Josh Perry, starting linebacker from Memphis, pro prospect, Amite. Armani Gilmore, probably the future quarterback for Kentucky, went to Amite. Donald Pennington, who just finished at Memphis, 6'4", 320 nose guard, Amite. It's player after player after player. Tyrus Wheat, who just signed with Mississippi State out of a junior college, an All-American, 6'3", 250, runs a 4.6, future NFL player, went to Amite. Darian Branch, who just signed this past year with Ole Miss, a corner, probably start for Ole Miss, either in the 4 package as a nickel or outright as a corner, 6'2", 180. Amite. I mean, it's name after name, but a lot of these kids, when they start in the program under Coach Powell, they come in and they're lean. They work their way into the system. They rotate. And every year you can tell they're working hard in the weight room, putting the weight on, good weight. And by the time they're seniors, a lot of these guys only play a year because they have to back up other players. But by the time they're seniors, they're under the radar, some of them, as big-time recruits. But I want to take my hat off to Coach Powell. He did a great job at Jules Sumner prior to Amite. He's a Mississippi native. He's moved here from Mississippi to be the head coach at Jules Sumner. I can't believe he's already in year 6 at Amite High School. I've been to a bunch of their games. I had a chance to go see Ismail Sopsher and Devontae Lee play when they were all sophomores. And let me put this to rest to a lot of people that are listening. When Ismail Sopsher was a sophomore defensive tackle, actually he was playing DN, and Rodney was playing DN, his brother, who's at Southeastern. Ismail weighed about 285 at 6'3", ran about a 4.7, and he looked like the next Glenn Dorsey. His senior year, he got up to about 330, slowed down quite a bit, and that's what people look at as senior film. Didn't have a good year. Redshirted at Alabama. They're getting the weight off of him. Orgeron wanted him because he knew he just needed to change his body, just like Tyler Shelvin did at LSU from Notre Dame or Crowley, who was at Northside. Tyler had ballooned up to about 385 and got down to about 340 last year. But I just want to put that out there for those recruiting people that just go off of a senior year. What happens sometimes, these kids get offered too early. They get satisfied. They don't work like they did before the scholarship offer. And they have to remember, you got to keep working. You got to stay in shape. Because if you're going to play in college, you got to be in shape. And, this kid is going to be a great player. He's being put to where he's changing his body. Again, just like Tyler Shelvin did at LSU. But I want kids to succeed. I grew up liking LSU because I grew up in Baton Rouge like a lot of people. But if they don't sign with LSU, I do want these kids to succeed. And he will. We're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to go to segment 4 and talk about the NFL draft, LSU's 221 class. What does it look like for the NFL draft? This is going to be fun. We'll be right back.
If you are a parent that needs a highlight tape and you need consulting advice on how to deal with the recruiting process, please contact Lee Brecheen, who has had over 30 years of experience dealing with college coaches and making highlight tapes all over the country. For more information, please contact Lee Brecheen at lbrecheen@aol.com. That is lbrecheen@aol.com. LBRECHEEN@aol.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen. Hope you're enjoying the show. Again, be sure to like us on the Facebook and on the podcast, and download a podcast to help us grow. If you're a parent listening, or a recruit, or a coach, or just a fan, if you thought the 220 class was great for the draft for LSU, 14 players drafted, which ties the most ever drafted in the United States ever. The 221 draft has a chance to be as good or better. So LSU realistically has a chance to get the 15 players drafted in 221, which means if you go by the amount of pro talent that's coming back, that means there's not going to be any drop-off to the team talent-wise, which means they're going to be a playoff team. That's my opinion. I always look at what a college team's bringing back on the OD line, skill positions, potentially at quarterback, the experience meshed with the freshmen coming in. LSU is starting to look like Clemson and Alabama when it comes to bringing in phenomenal freshmen who are not normally ordinary freshmen, meaning they'll have 8 to 10 kids play out of the class coming in that are not ordinary people. And like Stingley. Stingley was not an ordinary freshman that came in and played. They have more of those kids coming in. That's when you've reached the point to where you can compete with anybody on Saturday and be better than most of the people you play. When you get that kind of talent, it makes coaching a lot easier. And by the way, I want to put this out there. Ed Orgeron was quoted the other day, I think it was on a radio show, saying that because of the coronavirus, they're going to have to rely on film only more because they don't have any camps. Well, call me. I watched 200 teams in person play last year in the state for the 24th year in a row. Went to 62 practices and watched all 310 teams on film and was done with it by December of this past year for these kids coming up. When Nick Saban was at LSU, I did a lot of their third-party recruiting his whole 5 years at LSU and worked with Derek Dooley, Coach Thompson, Lance Thompson, all the different recruiting coordinators that were at with Nick Saban. I worked with them and was a paid consultant. So I can do that still, and I still do that with a lot of colleges. But I would love to help Ed Orgeron in LSU. I would love to help them pick the best players. Not that they need help, because everybody wants to go there. It's getting the right players and not overlooking the sleepers in the state that are going to be great players. And that's something I was able to help DiNardo with and Nick Saban in my career. I never mentioned that to the public. I don't know, because I'm not a bragging guy, but I'm mentioning it now. But the 221 draft, think of these guys, and I think these guys are going to leave as juniors. Terrace Marshall, if he has a good year, he's a first-round pick from Parkway High School. Jamar Chase, even if he doesn't have a great year, he's still going pro, still going to first round, which I can't see him not having a great year. Ed Ingram, who's a redshirt junior, I'm so happy he came back because he needed to show the pro teams that he's going to stay out of trouble, everything's going to be fine, and he's going to be everything they think he can be, which is basically like having Sadiq Charles back the year after all his suspensions, and yet if Sadiq Charles would have came back and not got suspended again, he's a first-round pick. The Redskins know he's a first-round pick. But Ed Ingram, I think, will go in the first round. That's right, big number 70. As a guard or tackle, that kid is phenomenal from DeSoto, Texas. He can really put you on your back. He's strong, great feet, and for missing 7.5 months of training, he looked pretty good for LSU last year for a guy that wasn't in tip-top shape and actually was in decent shape for a lineman that sat out almost a year. All right, so we're up to 3 first-round picks for next year, 3 juniors. If Damon Clark has a great year, which I think he will at linebacker, he'll have more upside than even Patrick Queen and Jacob Phillips as a junior, and will go pro. He's 6'3", 245, runs a 4.5 40. So that's 4 first-round picks. That's just the juniors. There's a potential 5th junior if he plays like Ed Orgeron thinks he can this year. Redshirt junior tight end, converted to defensive end. TK McClendon, who came in last year from a junior college as a tight end, has moved to defensive end, his natural position. He's 6'6", 275, runs a 4.6 40. If he has a good year, not a great year, he'll be a first-round pick as a junior. That's 5 juniors, okay? I'm just saying, if everything works out like it's supposed to, that's 5 juniors that'll go in the first round. How many LSU first-round picks were in this 220 class? 5. Let's get to the seniors. Tyler Shelvin came back. Great move. Hopefully he gets down to his great weight. I think Ed would love him at 320. He's at 340. Hopefully he comes back. Ed, if you're hearing this, Tyler, please come back at least 340, not 370, from being away from the practice field for a while. But if this kid comes back at 320, Tyler Shelvin's a first-round pick. That's 6 potential first-round picks, okay? Jacoby Stevens, who could have won in the draft this year, is probably a third-round pick. Because of his leadership, his high IQ of the game, his hitting ability, his coverage ability for being a jumbo athlete at 6'1", about 225. He'll run a 4.5 40 for the combine. That's another Patrick Queen, but more athletic. That's potentially 7 first-round picks. So I've got LSU with potentially 7 first-round picks next year if everything goes as planned. Neil Farrell will get drafted. He'll be 8. Top 3-4 rounds. Defensive tackle from Mobile. Great player. I don't think he's hit his upside yet. Kerry Vincent will get drafted because he can run. He'll run a 4.4. He could be a great nickel. He'll be number 9, draft pick number 9. Glad he came back. Gabriel Cox, who just transferred in from North Dakota State, if he has a great year, was already thought of as a second, third round pick. He could be 8 first round picks and 10 draft picks. Torrey Carter could be a 6th or 7th round draft pick as a fullback. Zach Von Rossenberg might be the oldest 30-year-old punter ever drafted. He's a pretty good punter. 6'5", 240. Didn't have a great year last year, but they didn't need him. He was the job to have, to be the punter from LSU last year. So that's 10 draft picks. Jamal Pettigrew, if he has a good year, who's 6'6", 270, tight end, runs a 4.7. He'll do the combine if he gets invited, do real good. He's raw, but he could get a late draft pick, 5 to 7. That would be 11 draft picks. Eric Monroe, if he finally hits his potential from North Shore High School in Texas, he's been hurt a lot. He could be a late round draft pick if he has a good year. He'll be 12. Racy McMath, here's the wild card. He's a receiver, 6'3", 220, runs a 4.5. Very intriguing. Now, a lot of receivers don't go in the first round, but you're looking at a guy that could be a second or third round pick. He could be 13 draft picks for LSU. John Trey Kirkland from Lutcher, who's really waited his turn like Russell Gage did. Like Stephon Sullivan did. John Trey Kirkland can run a 4.5. He's a former quarterback from Lutcher. He could be a draft pick for LSU, late round guy, 5, 6, or 7th round. He could be a 14th pick total to meet last year's total of 14 picks. And don't rule out Ray Thornton, Andre Anthony, Austin Dacoulis, Glenn Logan, Cameron Lewis, even Lloyd Cole, who's a great walk-on DB from Parkway. He's not a regular walk-on. And then you can add the recent signee, Liam Shanahan from Harvard, who is another NFL prospect. So we've got 20 to 19, 20 kids again that are potential NFL draft picks for the 221 draft for LSU. Think about it. Adequate quarterback play in 221 means another national championship possibly. Miles Brennan just needs to have the offense functioning. And we're not even talking about Ty Davis and John Emery and Chris Curry and Palmer from Kentwood and all these other great young players, Cordell Thomas, Anthony Bradford, Chasen Hines. I mean, these are guys, I'm not even talking about these guys for the draft. Team is loaded. But think about it. I just wanted to present that today because there's not a drop-off with the team. And now that LSU's won the national championship, you pick up 2 graduate transfers who are pro prospects. I mean, that's never happened with LSU. That's better than signing a high school kid who needs a red shirt or a high school kid who needs a couple of years, right? I bet Ed Orgeron right now is saying, you know what, I'm glad I've got these scholarships. I can bring in an NFL O-lineman ready to go, an NFL linebacker ready to go, and then I can do what I want my third scholarship. I can keep it and let it roll over to the next year. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I'm going to have NFL notes. We're going to talk more about the NFL. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back, Lee Brecheen, Louisiana Sports Scouting Report. I want to say Louisiana. It's the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen. Hope everybody's safe in their vehicles, at home, on their car, phone, their computer. I know we're all ready to get out. I'm working out of the house now, going on week 7. Ready for football. I wish I could hear everybody say, yeah, ready for football. I know I am. And I've interviewed, me and Jace Lejeune, my editor, in the last 7 weeks, we've interviewed, I counted, over 2,000 recruits and over 210 coaches, not including assistants. It's over about 250 total between the two of us. And I'm going to tell you what, the coaches, the kids, the parents, they're fired up. Anybody out there that says, look, there's not going to be any football played or people don't want to, don't say people don't want to. People are ready more than ever before to go out there and play football when things are back. Because we've interviewed everybody that's playing the game coming up in this state. And I will say this, positive news, the kids are training. They're making the best of it. The coaches are making the best of it. The parents are making the best of it. And that just shows you that this is a very strong state, strong people, proud to be from Louisiana. I want to go ahead and talk about the NFL draft in segment 4. Some notes about the Denver Broncos. This is pretty unique. I don't even know if Jacob Hester's covered this, but Jacob Hester's a part of this. 2 things. The Denver Broncos. Let me back up. Jersey number 18 for LSU is the jersey that is given to the biggest leader of the team, the one that has worked hard, the leader. The team votes on it every year. Jersey number 18, LSU. And many great kids have worn the jersey. One of those being Jacob Hester. But the Denver Broncos, did you know, have had 4 players from LSU that wore jersey number 18 play for them. Matt Mock, now Lloyd Cushenberry, Jacob Hester, and Lamine Barrow from John Ehret High School. 4. Isn't that pretty unique? 4 that wore number 18 have all been a part of the Denver Broncos organization. Also thought in the NFL, it's pretty interesting that the Cincinnati Bengals, with all the talent from LSU, they did not draft an LSU player outside of Joe Burrow, and they did not sign a free agent LSU player. It's pretty interesting, though, because they have needs all over, right? Very surprised they did not sign someone from that offense. I know they couldn't get Jefferson. Probably couldn't get Chasson from the defense, but they had a chance to get some other players, and they didn't do a lot of trades. They didn't trade up or trade into the first round like the Patriots do, or like Dallas does, or the Ravens do, like to get another first-round pick. I would have done it. I would have traded back in the first round to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire late in the first, gave up future picks, get me a running back. I know they got a couple of good backs coming back, but I'm telling you, Clyde and Joe were special. But anyway, for kicks, I threw that out. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the New Orleans Saints and an interesting tidbit for their free agency, and also a kid from Louisiana they picked up. Right out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, they picked up a big-time free agent. We'll be right back.
Like what you hear? Well, make sure to check out our website, lefootballmagazine.com, for all of the latest recruiting information statewide. This week, we catch up with Tiger linebacker Jacoby Brock, Zachary wide receiver Chris Hilton, and we also will provide NFL draft coverage on all the Louisiana natives and college football players selected. So if you want to get your recruiting fix, go to lefootballmagazine.com today.
Welcome back. The Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen. Be sure, everyone, to download a podcast or like it, and you'll be able to get future shows. Hope you're enjoying the show. My goal is to always give the listeners information about Louisiana and change the topics. And the more we go, when the coronavirus, everything's lifted, then we'll have call-ins, and we'll have different sports programs, basketball, baseball, maybe even track, and do more and more every week. And I hope you enjoyed the Amite profile earlier in the show and LSU's 221 draft class potentially, and all the other stuff that we've been talking about. But this segment, I want to talk about the New Orleans Saints. I thought they picked up one of the best free agents in the draft after the draft. Shocked the kid didn't get drafted because it kind of went like his recruiting went. This kid played at Madison Prep for his dad, Coach Roach. I'm talking about Malcolm Roach, that ended up signing with the University of Texas Longhorns and had one of his best games against LSU this past season. He's a defensive end, 6'2", about 295, runs a 4.8, 4.9 40. Great character kid. Comes from a coaching tree. His dad was a coach. His dad was a player. Grew up in it. High IQ of the game. Full throttle guy. High effort guy. And he doesn't get drafted. That just shows you how hard it is to get drafted. But Malcolm Roach was picked up by the New Orleans Saints as a defensive end. And this is a steal, people. When you can get a kid who's not only going to make the team and probably be a part of the defense as a rookie and will have a chance to be a big part of the team in a couple of years. Some guys that are free agents are projects. Some guys that are free agents belong on the practice squad and they never get off of that. And then there are guys that just, for some crazy reason, should have got drafted. And Malcolm Roach is one of those kids. In high school, Malcolm was a running back at 250, 6'2", a tight end and a defensive end. He had over 60 career sacks. He ran the ball for over 15 to 1,800 yards. He had over 300 tackles for Madison Prep. Here's a guy that, can do it all. And he gained about 40 pounds at Texas. He beefed up to about 295, 300. And he still moves really well, and he's a hard worker. I really think that Malcolm's going to be the steal of the Saints free agency. And here's another note I wanted to share with our listeners. But the Saints get a hard rap about not taking LSU guys. They really do. But like Peyton commented the other day, we draft off of our board, off of our list. We don't get emotional about it and take a guy. We stay to our board. We stay to our list. And I admire that. He's a genius. The guy's one of the best coaches to ever coach in the NFL. But one thing that's interesting, and this doesn't make it better with LSU fans, but in free agency, the Saints signed 2 Oregon offensive linemen. And between the draft and free agency, they picked up 3 Oregon players. So I'm sure someone's going to point that out after I do today. But obviously, some fans are going to give them a hard time for that. 20 LSU players combined, draft or free agents. Not one of them except, one guy, Adrian McGee, signed a free agent deal from Franklinton as an offensive lineman. And Adrian will probably be a practice squad guy, developmental guy. Someone that may or may not come off the practice squad ever, but will get a chance to develop for a year or two. But they took 3 Oregon players, and, I don't know. I watched Oregon play this year. I wasn't impressed with Justin Herbert, the quarterback. I know their offensive line was a big talk about how great they were, and I didn't think they were that physical. And I didn't think Oregon was a very physical team. They have a lot of guys that look the part, but not physical like SEC or Big Ten or even Big 12. But, what do I know? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to end the show with our mailbag. We're going to talk about baseball and also basketball. We'll be right back.
If you're a parent that needs a highlight tape and you need consulting advice on how to deal with the recruiting process, please contact Lee Brecheen, who has had over 30 years of experience dealing with college coaches and making highlight tapes all over the country. For more information, please contact Lee Brecheen at lbrecheen@aol.com. That is lbrecheen@aol.com. LBRECHEEN@aol.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen. In our mailbag today, we've got some pretty interesting questions in our mailbag. One's going to be baseball related, and the other one's going to be basketball related. Let me go to the first one. We've got Chuck from Monroe asking, Lee, who is a sleeper basketball recruit in Louisiana for the class of 221, high school basketball player. Who was a sleeper recruit? Well, Chuck, I'm going to tell you this from football. I like football players that play basketball. I remember watching Andrew Whitworth play basketball. Marcus Spears play basketball at Southern Lab. I watched him play basketball. Andrew Whitworth did it at West Monroe. Pretty good big guys that can run and move. There's a football player who's in the 221 class from Rayville High School. He's one of the best basketball players, I think, in the state. And his name is Kashi Nat, N-A-T-T. 6'2", about 186 pounds. Averaged 20 points a game for Rayville. And get this, 20 rebounds a game. 20 rebounds a game. That's a guy that can get up and get the rebound, right? I mean, 20, that's not normal, man. That's Dennis Rodman of high school. But remember the name, Kashi, K-A-S-H-I-E, Nat. And he's got a nickname that his teammates call him Poopy. But this guy's a phenomenal football player, too. He's under the radar for both sports. Now, more under the radar for football, probably. And in football, he's a DB. He's a receiver. He's a Wildcat quarterback. He's a corner. He's a 4'4", 540 guy with a 41-inch vertical jump. And talking to Coach about a month ago, Kashi could be that guy that if his grades are in order by December, January, he can pick on the map where he wants to go to college. Now, he's going to have a chance to sign as a two-guard in basketball or be a corner receiver, and I think he's a corner, or a free safety, D1 big time for football. So, Chuck, I hope I answered that question right. Our second question in our mailbag is from New Orleans, Larry. Larry wants to know, Lee, who was the best high school baseball player ever to come out of Jesuit High School? And you got to understand, that's a hard answer. I mean, the best baseball player to ever come out of Jesuit High School in New Orleans. Just take this into account. Jesuit has produced a lot of big-time baseball players over the years. But I did my homework, and I knew the answer. I had to go look up all their stats, but there's two guys that come to mind as the greatest baseball players based on college and pro to ever come out of Jesuit. One is Will Clark, and the other one is Rusty Staub. And what's really crazy for baseball people is that the stats for both of these guys are similar. Rusty Staub was 6'2", 190. Will Clark was a little over 6'1", about the same size. Rusty Staub was a six-time All-Star. Will Clark was a six-time All-Star. Rusty Staub played 23 years in the major leagues. Will Clark played 15 years in the major leagues. Rusty Staub had a .279 career batting average. Will Clark had a .303 career batting average. Will Clark had 2,176 hits in his career. Rusty Staub had 2,706 hits in his career. Rusty Staub had 292 homers. Will Clark had 284 homers. Runs batted in, Will Clark had an amazing 1,205 runs batted in. Will Clark played from 1986 to 2000. Played for San Francisco Giants from 1986 to 1993. And then for the Texas Rangers, he finished out his career from 94 to 98. Rusty Staub, in his 23 years, played 9 years with the Mets, played 6 years with the Houston Astros, and the remaining 15 years with some other teams. But I find it that these two players, and look, put their stats together from one high school, okay? You've got over 600 home runs between two players from one high school. Rusty Staub became one of the best pinch hitters in the league his last 7 years. Him and Carl Yastrzemski with the Red Sox, they played through their 40s and had great one at-bats a game. Will Clark will go down as one of the best players to ever come out of Mississippi State and also ever out of New Orleans and Jesuit, but most people would probably say Will Clark only, but I had to say Rusty Staub because Rusty was the first great baseball player to come out of Jesuit High School. And I hope you enjoyed the show today. We'll have another show on Monday. And if you have any questions, feel free to write to our mailbag, our website, lafootballmagazine.com. You can write to me, Lee Brecheen, or to Jace Lejeune. We're working on the preview magazine as we speak right now out of my house. I'm working on calling coaches and recruits for the 24th year. I've interviewed, like I said, over 250 coaches with Jace Lejeune combined and over 1,200 recruits in the state. It'll be a great issue that comes out now late August. Used to be July, but because of the coronavirus, it'll be late August. And you can watch our TV shows from this past year on YouTube. Check it out on the website. And again, tell more people about our podcast. Tell us what you like and don't like. And have a great weekend. And see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.